Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about scales. Now, this is the video which is really going to open up your eyes and allow you to be really creative with understanding the notes that are available to you, the chords that are available to you, and then you'll start to be able to flow as you make your beats. You're not really going to be restricted except for just your creativity. So here in front of me, I've typed in Piano World Helper into Google, and I've went to pianoworld.com, and I went to this little piano here. So a virtual piano, chords and scales. This has been an amazing tool, which I have used to help me learn chords and scales over the years. But before we get into this, I just want to let you guys know that I have created a course to learn the piano. So the course is actually called Learn Piano for Beatmakers and Producers. So if you guys are actually wanting to learn how to play the piano and improvise, and also learn the piano as a beatmaker, because as a beatmaker, we're always trying to create loops and stuff like that, then you guys can check out that course. Again, it's called Learn Piano for Beatmakers and Producers by Riley Weller, or my artist and producer name, Gratuitous. Okay, so let's get into this. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start in C major, okay? And what you're going to see is in C major, there is 7 notes available to us, okay? As you can see, they're all highlighted in blue. Now, I told you that a piano per octave has 12 notes. But as you can see, there's only 7 notes here which are available to us to play. So let's count them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. And then it just repeats back onto the C, which again is an octave higher. So C major is the easiest scale to understand how scales work. And the reason for that is, as you can see, there's absolutely no black notes. So there's only white notes in C major, which means that those are the notes that we're allowed to play for our beats to sound good. So by looking at these 7 notes which are available to us, this is telling us the notes that are available to us. It's also letting us know the chords we're allowed to play because our chords have to contain these notes. Okay, so for example, if a chord had a black note in it, well, we can't play that chord in here because once we go onto the chord video, you'll see that between the major and the minor chords, you can see that, sometimes it could have a black note or sometimes you could have white notes, okay? And the difference between a major and a minor chord is just where the third finger plays. So if you put your right hand up and the back of your hand is facing you, so your thumb is your 1, your index is your 2, your middle finger is your 3, your ring finger is your 4, and your pinky finger is your 5, okay? So where your third finger plays determines a major or a minor. So it's how many notes are between the first, which is your thumb, and the third, which is your middle finger. So as you can see here, if we go to major, we have 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 notes in between for a major. If we go to a minor, we only have 2 notes, okay? So with me telling you that, when we go to major and minor scales, this will tell us, if we're allowed to use a major or a minor chord. Just for example, if I were to go C minor chord, it's like, well, as you can see, it has the C, it has the D sharp, so a black note, and then a G. In this case, C minor is not in the scale of C major because we can't use the black note. But if we go to C major chord, you can see that, yes, it is. But for example, if we would go to D, and we go to the D major, so as you can see, a D major chord actually has the black. And as you can see, it has 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that means that it's a major chord. So what that's telling us is that there's actually D minor in the scale of C major because we only need white notes, okay? I'll cover that in our chords video. Now, C major is actually the easiest scale to understand because as you can see, there's only white notes, right? However, C major is also the hardest scale, a lot of people say, to play. And the reason for that is because there's no black notes. And when we have black notes, it allows you to feel on the keyboard where you're actually playing. So for example, if you go up high or you go down low, you can kind of reference where you are on your piano. But when you have only white notes, there's nothing to reference, right? It's just, there's only white notes. So it's really hard to know. So that leads me into a pro tip that I want to pass on to you, something which I've discovered over my years. So when you're first starting up, it's really cool to figure out all these scales and, you're starting to have your eyes open to what notes are in the scale, and then you can start playing with that. But after you have tinkered around a little bit, I really suggest to you to pick a scale and work in it. And the reason why I say that is because this allows you to make the most use of your time. So for myself, I like to use C minor, and I don't click minor here. I actually go scroll this down and I go pure minor, okay? So C minor is actually my favorite scale. It's the scale that I play most of my music in. And the thing is with DAWs, our music programs, is we can always transpose our music if we really needed to make it into a different scale, right? That's the awesome thing with technology. But practicing the piano is all about muscle memory, okay? So the more you keep practicing one scale, the more you build that muscle memory, knowing what notes are in that scale, what chords are in that scale. So when it comes to practice, you're making the most use of your time. So that's just a little pro tip I want to pass on to you, okay? Pick one scale, practice it, learn it very well, and then you will be able to expand from there. Okay, and so now I'm just going to throw a little curveball at you, okay? So in major scales, the 7th note is a note which is very, very hard to play for a chord. It's very hard to add, in this case, the B chord in the C major scale in your music. And the reason for that is because it makes it diminished. And so if you look here, there's like a dominant, there's like a sustained. So there's different types of chords that you can play. This is just a basic major chord. If we go C major chord, so it's called like your triad. So like your thumb is on the C, your middle finger is on the E, and your pinky would be on the G in this case, right? But and then again, if we go to minor, the difference is between your first, which is your thumb, and your third, which is your middle finger. And in this case, there's only 2 notes in between, making it minor. But I actually don't think that this scale helper has diminished for some reason. I remember looking into this before. But anyway, so it's a chord and it's called a diminished chord. And that's what the B is here. Because if we look at an actual B chord, okay? So remember, if we go to C major, it's telling us that there's absolutely no black notes in the scale of C major. That means that it has to be white notes. So when we come to a B chord, okay, and I'll show you that. So we're going to go to B, and we're going to go major. You're going to see that here's the B, and it has 2 black notes, okay? We go to B minor now, and you can see that there's 2 white notes, but there's still a black note. But it's like, well, you can't have a major or the minor chord of B because it has a black note. So that is why it's diminished. And this comes down to the F, okay? So on this B chord in the C major scale, it's actually B, D, F. And for myself, as I'm producing my music and stuff like that, I typically just stay away from a B chord. I just never use the B chord if I was in C major, right? Because every scale, whatever key you're in, if you're in a major scale, it's always the 7th note, okay? So, if we went to like A major, here, it would be this G sharp here again. So if we count, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it's your 7th. So again, it's your G sharp, which you'd want to stay away from. So if you look into Wikipedia, it's called a leading tone triad. And this is something that I'm not sure who this guy is, but I remember researching this as I was making my piano course. And it's actually a really interesting quote. He says, the subtonic, the leading tone chord, is founded upon 7 of the major keys, okay? So the 7th key, I believe, and is diminished, just like I'm explaining to you. And then it's also very, very neglected among composers, and then possibly a little overworked by others. Okay, so its occasional use gives character and dignity to a composition. So for myself, like I neglect it most of the time. I find it very hard to add into my music. So I would stay in the 6 chords within that scale. Now that's not to say I don't use B as a single note around in my music. It's just when it comes to the chord, I typically stay away from that. Now, to continue on off of that, as we are dealing with a minor scale now, again, sorry, I don't use minor there. I use pure minor down here. It's the 2nd note, okay? So when you're in a major scale, it's the 7th, which is tricky. And then when you're in a minor scale, it's the 2nd, which is tricky, okay? And again, it's just to do with the way how the chord lines up with the scale. It becomes like diminished. So that's just a little breakdown of scales. So it's just important for you, pick a key And typically, I think people choose keys because it allows the music to be kind of higher or lower in pitch. I know sometimes a singer, sometimes, they would change the song. They'd say, oh, well, let's sing this in the key of D, or, oh, let's sing this in the key of G, because, maybe it's easier on their voice to sing within that frequency range.